I knew something was wrong when my front door key didn't work. I'd used that same brass key for 34 years, raised my babies behind that door, buried my husband after we picked out the shutters together, laughed, cried, prayed, cooked, collapsed right there just beyond that lock. And yet one Tuesday morning after grocery shopping, it wouldn't turn. Maybe it's rust, I told myself, or maybe I'm tired. But the second key didn't work either, and neither did the third. "Hi, Nana," her voice was sugar, but her eyes avoided mine. "Oh, don't worry, we had the locks changed for your safety." For my safety. She said it so kindly, you might almost miss the coldness under the honey. "You've been forgetful lately. The neighbors were worried. We thought it was best." The neighbors. I just brought them banana bread 3 days ago, remembered all their names, even their dogs. But suddenly, I was the confused old woman. It wasn't dementia. It was a decision. A decision to cut me out not just from the family group chat, but from my own life. I wasn't forgetting things. I was remembering too much. Like who helped me set up that living trust? Who kept asking about the deed to the house? Who started managing my pills without asking? The next Sunday at church, Miss Alice patted my hand and whispered, "We're all praying for you, sugar. I know Alzheimer's is a heavy cross." My stomach dropped. My granddaughter had gotten ahead of the story, told everyone I was slipping, that I couldn't be trusted with money decisions, or even my own front door. I wrote everything down. Every conversation, every strange bank charge, every call I wasn't supposed to hear. If they wanted to erase me, they forgot one thing. A woman like me never forgets the truth. Not when it's tied to her name, her home, her dignity. They thought I was too old to notice, too slow to act, too confused to fight back. But I wasn't just watching, I was documenting. And then I did what every woman who's ever been underestimated dreams of doing. I walked into my old lawyer's office, uninvited, unannounced, unshaken. Mr. Donnelly had drawn up my will 15 years ago, right after my husband died. He was older now, just like me. But his eyes still lit up when he saw a woman walking in with fire in her step. "I need help," I said. "They're stealing from me while smiling to my face." A bank statement where my emergency fund had a withdrawal for a new TV I never bought. My prescription tracker showing double doses. A voice memo I recorded when my granddaughter forgot to hang up and muttered, "She won't even remember this anyway." But I remembered everything. They've got guardianship in motion, don't they? I nodded. I'd seen the letter. They were trying to get legal authority over me, saying I was mentally unfit, claiming I'd wandered off once. For the record, I went to Dairy Queen. Not lost, just craving soft serve. "Then we'll need to hit first," he said. We updated my legal standing, filed for a formal mental evaluation, one I chose, drafted a restraining notice for financial access, and we made copies of everything. Because when they lie about your mind, you have to let the paper speak. And I had 42 pages of truth ready to shout louder than any whisper in my town. I always thought Mrs. Tanner was just the lady who watered her begonias at 6 a.m. sharp. But one morning, she knocked on my door with a paper plate of cornbread and eyes that didn't blink. "May I come in? There's something I think you should hear." She pulled out her phone, bless her nosy habits, and hit play. That was my son's voice, clear as day, talking on her porch, not knowing the screen door was cracked open. "Once the papers go through, we sell the house. She won't know." And then came my daughter-in-law's chuckle like betrayal was a game. Mrs. Tanner paused the audio. "You remember that day you waved at me from the mailbox? That's when they were planning all this. Because sometimes the loudest thing a woman can do is listen." That night, I made copies of Mrs. Tanner's recording. Sent one to Mr. Donnelly, another to the bank, one more to Adult Protective Services. And I wrote a letter not angry, not bitter, but truthful. "You told the neighbors I had Alzheimer's. You said I was confused. But I've never seen more clearly. I carried you, cleaned your scraped knees, made birthday cakes from scratch. And now you try to erase me with a lie. But I am not gone, and you don't get to write my ending." On the kitchen table, I placed a cupcake. Vanilla with the pink icing I always made for myself. No guests, no cards. But this year, for the first time in decades, I celebrated myself, not because someone remembered, but because I finally did. 2 weeks later, while checking the mail that no one thought I'd care about, I noticed an envelope addressed to my house, but under my son's name. The handwriting was official, from a law office. I don't open others' mail, never wanted to. But something inside whispered, "They've already taken your voice. Don't let them take your home." So I opened it. They were selling the house. My house. The one I built memories in, cooked Thanksgiving turkeys in, and held babies by the fireplace in. And they were using a false declaration of my mental state to do it. There was a doctor's note with a forged signature. They'd claimed I was no longer competent to handle my affairs. But I had the bank receipts, the passwords, the groceries I ordered online. And I had my mind. I scheduled a meeting with the lawyer. Walked in with my cane, my folder, and my truth. I'm not confused. I'm not lost. I'm angry, and I'm legally still the owner. The man blinked stunned. He had only ever spoken with my son. He apologized, canceled the sale papers, and promised a follow-up. But I wasn't done. I filed a police report. I called a reporter from the local paper. I made sure the assisted living center they contacted got the truth directly from me. Because the most dangerous lie isn't the one you tell the world, it's the one you think your mother won't uncover. They walked through the door a week later, pretending to be caring. "How have you been, Mom?" I smiled, poured tea, sat across from them, and didn't say a word. I just slid the envelope across the table, the one I opened, the one that betrayed them. And for the first time, they didn't know what to say. The locks had been changed. Did I cry? Yes, for 5 minutes. Then I picked up the phone, called a locksmith, and had every lock in the house replaced under my name this time. The way it always should have been. I stood there as the locksmith worked the sun, filtering through the blinds onto my tired but determined face. "Ma'am, do you want me to make extra keys?" I smiled. "Just one, for me, no one else." That was the day I took back, not just the keys, but my voice, my place, my right to exist. You see, they tried to confine me physically and emotionally. But even a dim room can become a place of rebirth when a woman remembers who she is. While they whispered I was declining, I started journaling. I found an online group for seniors facing abuse. I reconnected with an old friend from church who was now a lawyer. I learned how to set up a savings account in just my name. Every click of a button was a step back to me. I didn't yell, I didn't plead. I wrote. One letter, handwritten like I used to do when they were little and needed comfort. Only this time it wasn't a lullaby. It was a goodbye to guilt, a declaration of independence, a reminder that the woman who raised them, the woman they lied about, used, dismissed, was not gone. She had simply been underestimated. I invited the neighbors for tea. Some had stopped waving, some looked confused, some believed what they'd been told. But they came, and I told them everything, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I showed them the doctor's report, the forged documents, the canceled home sale papers. And then I said, if I ever lose my mind, you'll know. Because I'll forget to forgive. And I haven't forgotten that yet. After the tea with the neighbors, I went straight to my lawyer friend Helen. Not to sue. Not yet. But to rewrite my will. You see, everything was still under their name. My house, my savings, even the antique jewelry from my mother. I took it all back. Who do you want to leave it to? Helen asked gently. I paused. And I said, to the ones who treated me like I still mattered, strangers, neighbors, church friends. Even the delivery boy who asked if I was okay. Because love is not measured in blood. It's measured in who shows up when you're forgotten. That Sunday, I walked into church again. Same coat, same pew, same hymn book with the corner folded. But everything had changed. People whispered. Some even stood. Because the rumors were loud, but my return was louder. After the service, the pastor asked me to say a few words. I didn't expect that. But maybe it was time. So I stood at the altar and said, they said I was gone. I'm not. They said I was confused. I'm clearer than ever. They said I forgot who I was. But the truth is, I finally remembered. They never apologized. Not once. But I didn't wait for it. I learned that forgiveness is not permission to forget. It's permission to live without chains. I painted again. Cooked for people who appreciated it. Taught a little girl across the street how to knit. And every night I lit a candle not for them but for me. To remind myself that a woman's worth doesn't vanish with age or betrayal. It just deepens like old oak roots. I didn't plan it, but life sometimes sets the stage better than any script. I saw him, my son, coming out of the grocery store. Alone. No smile. Just that hurried, nervous walk I knew so well. I could have passed by, could have looked away, but I didn't. I walked up slow but steady. Hello, Mark. He froze, like he'd seen a ghost. Mom. I didn't think that I'd be standing. I finished for him. He looked down, avoided my eyes. You were confused. You didn't understand what was going on. There it was, gaslight wrapped in guilt. I took a breath. You told the neighbors I had Alzheimer's, I said calmly. You told the bank I couldn't manage my money. You told your children I was no longer here. But I remember everything, Mark. Every dish I washed, every fever I sat by. Every night I stayed up waiting for you to come home. And I especially remember the sound of silence when you didn't show up for my birthday. He looked like he wanted to say something. But this time, I didn't need an apology. I'm not here to fix the past. I just came to tell you I'm alive. Fully, completely, and beautifully, without your permission." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't cry. Not until I got home and stood in the doorway of my little cottage, the one with the white fence and wild roses climbing the posts. I cried not because I was sad, but because I was free. The first thing I did was plant roses. Not for beauty, but for memory. Each bloom was a promise to myself that this chapter would be different. Not bitter, not small, but full. I named the space the Garden of Second Chances. Not many came at first. Just a few older women from the local church, and one teenage girl who'd been kicked out by her parents. But word spread. People began arriving with stories that echoed my own. A man whose son emptied his savings. A woman whose daughter-in-law called her dead weight. A grandmother whose birthday hadn't been remembered in 6 years. And we healed together. We shared soup and stories, laughed over broken toasters and burnt pies. Cried without shame. Because here, no one was forgotten. Not anymore. One evening, as the sunset painted the porch golden, that same teenage girl Emily whispered, "You know you're not like other grandmas. You listen. You see people." And I smiled not because I'd earned it, but because I knew what it felt like to be invisible. I built the place I wish I had when they locked the doors behind me. And now, that basement I once cried in, it's just a shadow. The garden is the light. It started with a knock. Not from family, not from pity, from a local reporter named Grace. She'd heard of my garden, heard how people came here with nothing but sadness, and left with a little bit of hope. She asked gently, "Would you mind sharing your story on air?" At first, I hesitated. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure the world cared about an old woman's heartbreak anymore. But then I remembered they said I had Alzheimer's. They said I couldn't speak for myself. Maybe it was time they heard my voice clear, strong, and unforgettable. We filmed it on a Thursday. The roses had just bloomed behind me like they knew. I didn't cry when I spoke. I didn't curse the ones who hurt me. I simply said, "They locked the door on me, but I opened another for others like me. You may have been forgotten, but you are never without worth." The piece aired Sunday evening. The station thought it would just get a few clicks. It went viral. People across the country reached out. Sons and daughters, but also other grandmothers writing, "Thank you for speaking what we've never been allowed to say." It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun filtered gently through the leaves, casting golden stripes over the worn stone path of my garden. And that's when I saw him. Jason, my eldest grandson, the same one who used to sit on my lap and beg for bedtime stories. The same one who for years believed the lie that I had vanished into silence. He stood at the gate awkwardly. No flowers, no embrace. Just a tense grip on his phone, like he wasn't sure if he should be filming or feeling. I opened the gate myself. No need to pretend this was a surprise reunion. I had long stopped waiting. "Hi, Grandma," he mumbled. His eyes darted around, taking in the garden, the news clipping on the bench. The women laughing together at the table, the handmade sign that said, "You belong." "Nice place," he said. "Didn't know you started all this." I invited him to sit. He glanced at the cameras discreetly placed near the entrance he'd seen the interview. "I didn't know what they were doing," he offered. "Mom said you weren't..." "Well," I nodded, not in agreement, just in understanding. "Did you believe her?" I asked. He hesitated. I don't know what I believed. I guess I didn't question it. That, I told him, was the real heartbreak. Not the lies, but how easy it was for those who loved me to accept them. He stayed an hour. He left with a small potted lavender. I gave him something living to remember. As he walked out, I said softly, "If you ever want to know me again, you'll have to meet the woman I've become, not the lie they replaced me with." He paused, then left without looking back. And I stood there in my garden. Strong, rooted, unshaken. 3 days after Jason's visit, I received a letter. It came in a plain envelope, no return address, just my name scrawled in shaky handwriting I hadn't seen in decades. Inside, a folded page and a photograph. The letter was from my old neighbor in Texas, Miss Connie. She had lived across the street from us for 42 years, until her daughter moved her into a retirement condo. Her words were short but sharp, like she knew they wouldn't be read kindly if intercepted. "I saw them. That day you disappeared. The moving truck. The argument in the driveway. The check in your son's hand. I knew it wasn't what they told us. I tried to call. They said you were gone, that your mind was too far gone to answer. But I never believed them, and I never stopped praying." Attached was the photo. It showed my son smiling, holding my antique mirror in one hand and signing a document in the other. In the background, someone boxed up my sewing machine. That letter cracked something open. Not in me, I had already rebuilt, but in the narrative they crafted. The one they fed to neighbors' church friends, even my own grandchildren. The truth had survived in the margins, in the memory of a neighbor in a photograph snapped casually in a woman who refused to be part of a lie. I contacted Miss Connie. We cried on the phone like old friends lost in time. She said, I knew they'd try to erase you, but they forgot roots run deep in Texas. And we remember. The next day, I framed the photo, hung it in my office beneath a sign that reads, The past speaks, the future listens. And I made a promise. No more hiding. No more shame. No more silence from the women who raised families, built homes, were betrayed, and still bloom. It began with a single post. Just a photo of the framed image on my office wall, the one with my son signing away my belongings, laughing like it was just business. I typed just one sentence beneath it. They told the neighbors I had Alzheimer's so they could steal from me quietly. I didn't expect anything. But by midnight, it had 12,000 shares. By morning, women from Georgia to Oregon were commenting. They said the same thing about my mom. I was moved into a home without notice because they wanted my house. How do we stop this? And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just a grandmother who'd been silenced. I was the voice of thousands who had been systematically erased under the guise of care. I started a project called The Erased Women, a digital archive, a sanctuary for stories like mine. Women submitted their truths. One had her wedding ring stolen and resold. Another woke up to find her power of attorney signed away while she was in the hospital. One woman's children told her she had dementia while secretly selling her property and rerouting her mail. Each story was raw, undeniable, uncomfortable, but they were real. And suddenly, the world was listening. Local news picked up the story, then national media. Then the letters came from lawmakers. I wasn't just Grandma Ruth anymore. I was founder, survivor, activist. And most of all, I was seen. The producers called it a family reunited. But I knew better. This wasn't about reunion, it was a reckoning. We were seated under the studio lights, cameras, rolling audience holding its breath. My son sat across from me. The same man who once brought me wildflowers on Mother's Day now stared at me with the eyes of someone cornered. The host turned to me first. Ruth, what would you like to say to your son? I looked at him, not the man he had become, but the boy I once held. And I spoke. You didn't take my memory, David. You took my trust. And that is the costliest theft of all. He tried to respond. Something about not knowing about miscommunication, about doing what was best. But the audience wasn't buying it. Neither was I. I wanted you to be proud of me. At one point, his voice cracked. I didn't want you to be a burden. I wanted you to be proud of me. My voice stayed calm. You wanted pride? Then protect the hands that raised you, not hide them in a basement. Silence, heavy, raw. Then someone in the audience stood. An older woman. She wiped tears and said, Thank you, Ruth, for saying what so many of us were never allowed to. The host ended the segment with applause, but not the kind that feels good. It was the kind that sounds like truth. I left that stage freer than I had been in years. Not because my son apologized, but because I stopped waiting for him to. After the show aired, my phone didn't stop ringing for days. But these weren't pity calls. They were calls for help. Women from all over Texas, Georgia, Ohio, even Canada reached out. I watched your story, they'd say, and it's my story too. Widows, grandmothers, women silenced behind doors and diagnoses. They weren't broken, they were buried under the weight of invisibility. So I built something. I called it the Golden Trust, a foundation not just to talk about elder abuse, but to fight it. We offered legal aid for seniors manipulated into signing away property, support groups for women whose families used false diagnoses to control them, a network of safe voices, real people, not hotlines ready to listen and act. I used my retirement savings to launch it. I sold my wedding china, even my late husband's watch. People said I was crazy. But when you've been locked in a basement by your own child, you stop caring what reasonable sounds like. I got my house back. 3 months in, I got a letter. A woman named Elaine. Her son tried the same trick, told the HOA she had dementia forged her name on a property transfer. Because of the Golden Trust's legal team, she got her house back. She ended her letter with this: You reminded me I wasn't senile. I was just silenced. But I'm speaking again, Ruth. And I have you to thank. That letter sits framed in my kitchen now, right next to the calendar where I finally marked my birthday again. Not because I needed cake, but because I remembered I'm worth celebrating. It was the end of a long year of court dates, interviews, community gatherings, and quiet mornings in my new little house, with a dog named Barney and a tea kettle that squeaked off key. Then one morning I got a letter. From him, the son who said I was losing my mind, who let strangers believe I was wandering confused and dangerous, the one who emptied my savings and changed my locks. Dear Mom, it began. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this whole thing. But I saw you on TV, and something inside me broke. He talked about guilt, about shame, about a counselor who told him he had unresolved rage since Dad died. He wrote that he was sorry, that he didn't realize how much he hurt me, that he didn't want anything from me, just a chance to say the words out loud. So I wrote back, not to comfort him, but to close the door. I wrote, I forgive you, but I will never forget. And forgiveness does not mean return. You taught me silence, but I found my voice. You tried to erase me, but now I am a name others remember. Now, when they say my name, it's not whispered. It's spoken aloud by women who found courage in my chaos. In West Texas churches, in community centers in New York, in online groups called Voices of Ruth, where grandmas now gather not to gossip but to guide. I may have been erased from one birthday cake, but I left an entire generation of women with a recipe for resilience. And when they light their own candles, now they know who lit the first match. They told the neighbors I had Alzheimer's. Now the whole country knows the truth. The end. Ruth, 78, West Texas survivor and founder of the Golden Trust.